You're watching the Stories That Scare channel. There is no turning back now.
Story 1. 6 years after someone broke into my parents' house, I ended up sitting beside the guy who did it. He confessed while we were doing court-ordered community service together. But by the end of that weekend, the burglar wasn't the person I was afraid of anymore. My dad was. This happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2019. I was 25 years old, and believe it or not, the whole thing started with a traffic ticket. I had been pulled over for speeding, and between the ticket, court costs, and a couple of other fees I'd been putting off, I owed more money than I could comfortably pay. The judge gave me the option of completing community service hours to work off part of what I owed. I took it. At the time, I was embarrassed. I didn't even tell my parents. I told them I had started volunteering on Saturdays. My first assignment was with a city cleanup crew. We reported to a municipal building early Saturday morning, signed in, put on orange safety vests, and piled into an old white passenger van. There were about 10 of us. Some were there for minor things like me. Others had clearly gotten themselves into more serious trouble, but nobody really asked questions. We were all there for the same reason: get our hours, get our paperwork signed, go home. That's where I met Derek. Derek was probably 32 or 33. Tall, skinny guy, baseball cap, always yapping. He was the type of person who could meet you at 7 in the morning and by 8 know where you worked, what football team you liked, and whether you were married. Our supervisor paired us together. For most of the morning, we cleaned drainage ditches and vacant lots. Derek talked almost the entire time. Eventually, he told me he'd gotten into trouble when he was younger. Mostly stealing. Cars, garages, a few houses. He didn't brag about it, but he didn't seem particularly ashamed either. He talked about it like somebody describing the dumb things they'd done in high school. I actually liked him. He was a mood and a vibe. Around noon, our supervisor loaded everyone back into the van. We were being moved to another cleanup location across town. I was sitting beside Derek, about 3 rows back. We'd been driving maybe 15 minutes when I realized where we were, my parents' neighborhood. They'd bought their house when I was a teenager and still lived there. I almost pointed it out. I was literally about to say, "My parents live right around here." But before I could, Derek leaned toward the window. Then he slapped the seat in front of us. Holy poopy pants on a platter. A few people laughed. Derek pointed through the glass. "That house." I followed his finger. My stomach dropped. He was pointing directly at my parents' house. "What about it?" Derek grinned. "I broke into that place." I thought he was joking. "What?" "Years ago, me and my bro." The smile disappeared from my face. My parents' house had been burglarized. It happened in 2013. I was 19 and had already moved out. Someone broke a side window while my parents were gone. They stole jewelry, a laptop, cash, and a camera. Nobody was ever caught. I stared at Derek. I didn't tell him. Even now, I'm not completely sure why. Part of me wanted to see whether he was telling the truth, so I played dumb. "You remember one house from 6 years ago?" "Oh, I remember that one." "Why?" Derek looked through the back window. My parents' house was already disappearing behind us. Then he said something I'll never forget. Because stealing their stuff was probably the least illegal thing happening in that house. I laughed, not because it was funny, because I didn't know how else to react. "What does that mean?" Derek shook his head. "That guy had some weird stuff." "What guy?" "The man who lived there." My father. Of course, Derek didn't know that. He had no idea the person sitting beside him was the homeowner's son. "What kind of weird stuff?" Derek lowered his voice. Apparently, he and his friend had split up once they got inside. His friend searched the bedroom while Derek went through the small office near the back of the house. I knew exactly which room he meant. Dad's office. Growing up, I wasn't allowed in there without asking. There were books everywhere. Old books. Some were about religion. Others were about folklore, mythology, astrology, things like that. Dad also collected strange objects. Old coins, little statues, candles, stuff he'd bought at flea markets or ordered from catalogs. When I was a kid, I thought it was cool. Mom called it Dad's weird junk catch-all room. Derek didn't think it was cool. He said there were symbols drawn on pieces of paper, bundles of dried plants hanging near the window, small jars filled with powders. One jar contained what looked like teeth. I almost laughed again. My dad was a dentist. I'm kidding. He definitely wasn't a dentist. What kind of teeth? I didn't exactly stop to count them. Derek laughed. But that wasn't the weird part. There was more? Derek told me about a wooden cabinet underneath the desk. I'd seen it growing up. Dad always kept it locked. Apparently, in 2013, he hadn't. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. People Derek didn't recognize. Some were standing outside houses. Others were getting into cars. Some looked like ordinary family photographs. But every photograph had something written on the back. Names, dates, sometimes just a symbol. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe they were relatives, friends, people Dad worked with. Then Derek stopped talking. What? He looked at me. There was a picture of me. I felt my stomach turn. What do you mean? Me? He pointed at himself, standing outside a gas station. I didn't say anything. Derek said the picture appeared to have been taken from across the street. He wasn't looking at the camera. He didn't know anyone was photographing him. Maybe it wasn't you. It was me. How do you know? Because I was wearing my brother's jacket. He explained that his brother had died the year before the burglary. Derek had kept one of his jackets and wore it constantly. He remembered exactly what he had been wearing. But here's the thing. Derek leaned closer. That picture wasn't from after we broke into the house. I looked at him. It was from before. Now I didn't know what to say. According to Derek, he'd never met the homeowner. He'd never worked for him, never spoken to him. He and his friend hadn't targeted the house for any particular reason. They'd simply been driving through the neighborhood looking for an empty place. At least, that's what Derek had always believed. I asked if he'd taken the photograph. Nope. Why not? Because I wanted out of there. My feet suddenly felt like touching grass. Then he told me something else. Before leaving, he opened one of the old books sitting on the desk. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Derek couldn't remember everything written on it, but he remembered seeing his first name, Derek. Underneath it was a date, the following Thursday. What happened Thursday? Nothing. He shrugged. That's why I figured it was just weird junk. Then he looked out the window. But after we left that house, my buddy got sick. What kind of sick? Really sick. Ill like Neil the Seal. His friend developed a fever, then nightmares. Then he started waking up with scratches on his arms and chest. Derek said his friend blamed the house. Derek thought he was being ridiculous. Within a month, they stopped hanging around together. Eventually, the guy moved away. Never put eyes on him again. I sat there trying to process everything. Then Derek smiled. Anyway, you asked why I remembered the house. Actually, I hadn't. But I wasn't correcting him. The van reached our next location. Everybody started getting out. Before Derek stood up, he looked at me. Hey, yeah? If we ever get assigned to that neighborhood. He pointed toward the direction we'd come from. I'm working the other side of the street. He laughed. I didn't. That night, I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't planned on telling Dad. At least, that's what I told myself. Mom was in the kitchen. Dad was watching television. Everything looked completely normal. Dad was 61. Gray hair, glasses, polo shirt tucked into his jeans. If you'd met him at the grocery store, you would have forgotten him 5 minutes later. I sat down. We talked for a while. Eventually, Dad asked what I'd done that day. I finally admitted I'd been doing community service. Mom wasn't happy that I'd lied about volunteering. Dad thought it was funny. All that over a speeding ticket? Pretty much. Then I told him about Derek. I expected Dad to be angry. After all, I had supposedly met the man who burglarized their house. Instead, Dad became very still. What was his name? Derek. Derek what? I don't know. Dad looked at me. What did he look like? That question bothered me. I described him. Tall, thin, early 30s, baseball cap. Dad listened without interrupting. Then he asked, "Did you tell him you're my son?" "No." Dad leaned back. "Good." Mom looked at him. "Why is that good?" Dad didn't answer her. I asked him the same thing. "Why does that matter?" "It doesn't." Then Dad stood up. Conversation over. Except I wasn't finished. "Dad." He stopped. "He said he went into your office." Dad turned around. "He said you had some strange things in there." Nothing. "He said there were pictures of people." Dad stared at me. "And?" "He said there was a picture of him." For the first time that entire evening, my father looked genuinely surprised. Not scared, not confused, surprised. "He saw that?" Those were his exact words. "He saw that?" Not, "What picture?" Not, "That's ridiculous." He saw that. Mom looked between us. "What are you two talking about?" Dad ignored her. He walked closer to me. "Did he touch anything?" "I don't know." "Think." "Dad, this happened 6 years ago." "Did he touch anything in my office?" His voice had changed. I'd never heard my father sound like that. I told him Derek had opened one of his books. Dad closed his eyes. For maybe 2 seconds. Then he said, "People shouldn't touch things that don't belong to them." Mom told him to stop being dramatic. Dad smiled. Just like that. He was normal again. He changed the subject. I left around 9. The next Saturday, I reported for community service. I expected Derek to be there. He wasn't. I didn't think much of it. People miss days. The Saturday after that, still no Derek. I asked the supervisor. He checked his clipboard. "Derek hasn't been back." "Did he finish his hours?" "Nope." That was strange. Derek had told me he only had 2 Saturdays left. Another week passed. Nothing. I tried finding him online. I only knew his first name. No luck. Eventually, I finished my own hours. A couple of months went by. Then one evening, my parents invited me over for dinner. Afterward, Dad and I sat on the back porch. He was drinking coffee. We talked about work, football, normal stuff. Then, completely out of nowhere, Dad said, "You ever see that guy again?" "What guy?" "The one from community service." I immediately knew who he meant. "Derek?" Dad nodded. "No." Dad took another drink. "Good." There was that word again. Good. I finally asked him, "What happened to him?" Dad looked genuinely puzzled. "How would I know?" "You were acting strange when I told you about him." Dad smiled. "I'm always strange." I laughed. That was true. Then he said something that stopped me. "Besides, you don't need people like that around you." "I worked with him one day." "That's enough." Dad stood and went inside. A few minutes later, I went into the garage looking for a screwdriver. Dad kept tools in an old cabinet beside his workbench. I opened the wrong drawer. There were photographs inside. Maybe 20. My heart started pounding. I picked up the first one. A man I didn't recognize. Another. A woman. Another. Different people. Different places. Some looked recent. Others looked years old. Every photograph had a name written on the back. Then I found Derek. Same baseball cap. Same narrow face. He was standing beside a gas pump. He didn't appear to know someone was photographing him. I flipped it over. Derek. Underneath his name was a symbol. A circle crossed by 3 crooked lines. And underneath that, a date. I recognized it immediately. It was the Sunday after I'd told Dad about him. I heard something behind me. Dad was standing in the garage doorway. I nearly dropped the photograph. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I held it up. "What is this?" Dad looked at the photograph, then at me. "You weren't supposed to find those. What happened to Derek?" Dad walked into the garage. I stepped backward. He didn't come toward me. He simply opened the drawer. I asked again, "Dad, what happened to him?" My father sighed. Then he said, "You told me about a man who broke into our home. 6 years ago. He went through things he had no business touching. What did you do?" Dad looked at me for a long time. Then he said, nothing that wasn't already started. I didn't understand what that meant. Honestly, I still don't. I asked if Derek was alive. Dad never answered. Instead, he took the photograph from my hand and placed it back into the drawer. Then he closed it. Before walking away, he said, "You worry too much." For the next several years, I tried convincing myself there was a reasonable explanation. My father never called himself a witch, or a warlock, or anything else. He never sat me down and explained the books, the photographs, the symbols, or the things Derek claimed to have seen. But once I started paying attention, I remembered things from childhood differently. Dad sprinkling something across our doorway after strangers visited. The little bundles hanging in the attic. The rule about never answering if somebody called your name from outside after midnight. The time Mom tried throwing away one of his old books and Dad dug it out of the garbage before sunrise. Things I'd grown up thinking were simply Dad being weird. Maybe they weren't. I still don't know what happened to Derek. I've searched his name since then. I've searched missing person databases, arrest records, social media. Nothing. It's like he simply disappeared from my world after that Saturday. Maybe he moved. Maybe he went back to jail. Maybe Derek wasn't even his real name. Those are the explanations I prefer, because the alternative means my father did something to him. And I don't know what scares me more, that my father might have the ability to make someone disappear, or that he might have done it because he thought I wanted him to. Because even now, whenever we're alone, Dad eventually asks me the same question, usually casually, usually with a smile. "Everything good?" I tell him yes. Then he asks, "Nobody giving you trouble?" And ever since Derek disappeared, I have been very, very careful about how I answer. Story 2. Most people hear court-ordered community service and picture somebody in an orange vest picking beer cans and fast food wrappers off the side of a highway. That's what I pictured. Instead, they sent me to a community center. I thought I'd gotten lucky. Then one night, I chased a barefoot kid through a building that was supposed to be empty. I got close enough to see that the things sticking out of his shoulders weren't part of his shirt. They were horns. And his hands weren't hands anymore. This happened in Fort Wayne, Indiana, in 2021. I was 31 years old and had been ordered to complete 60 hours of community service. When I received my assignment, I actually smiled. Westbrook Community Center. No highway, no picking up trash in the rain, no standing outside in the middle of winter. The place had a gymnasium, several classrooms, a small indoor pool that hadn't been used in years, meeting rooms, and a large multi-purpose room. My assignment started in November, which was considered their off-season. The summer programs were long over. Youth basketball hadn't started yet. Most evenings, there might be one meeting or exercise class, and then the building would empty out. My supervisor was a maintenance guy named Raymond. Raymond was probably in his early 60s. Big guy, white mustache, always wore suspenders. On my first night, he handed me a cart full of cleaning supplies. "You know how to mop?" "Yes." "You know how to empty a trash can?" "Yes." "Congratulations, you're overqualified." I liked Raymond immediately. The work was ridiculously easy. I wiped tables, stacked chairs, mopped floors, cleaned bathrooms. Sometimes Raymond would give me a list and disappear to another part of the building for an hour. Compared with what I thought community service was going to be, this was a vacation. For the first couple of weeks, nothing unusual happened. Then, one Tuesday night, I was cleaning a classroom near the back of the building. It was a little after 8. The last scheduled activity had ended about 30 minutes earlier. Raymond was somewhere near the front office. I was wiping down tables when I saw somebody walk past the doorway. A kid, boy, maybe 12 or 13, brown hair, striped shirt, jeans, barefoot. "Hey!" He kept walking. I stepped into the hallway. "Hey, buddy, we're closed." The boy turned the corner. I followed him. When I reached the corner, he was gone. There was nowhere he could have gone except through a heavy metal door leading into an old storage area. I checked it, locked. I went looking for Raymond. "There's still a kid in here." Raymond looked up. "What kid?" "Maybe 12, 13. He immediately put down his coffee. "Where?" Back hallway. What did he look like? I described him. Raymond listened. Then he asked, was he barefoot? I laughed. Yeah, actually. Raymond didn't. He stared at me for several seconds. Then he picked up his keys. You're done back there tonight. What? I've got plenty for you to do up front. Who's the kid? No kid. I just saw him. Raymond started walking. I followed. Raymond! He stopped. Then he turned around. If you see him again, don't follow him. I laughed again. Why? Raymond looked directly at me. Because I asked you not to. That was all he'd say. For the rest of the night, I cleaned the lobby. I figured Raymond knew some neighborhood kid who liked sneaking into the building. The barefoot thing was weird, but kids are weird. I didn't think much about it, until Thursday. That evening, I was cleaning the multipurpose room. I looked through the little window in the door and saw the same boy standing in the hallway. Barefoot. This time he wasn't walking. He was looking directly at me. I opened the door. Hey! The boy turned and walked away. I remembered Raymond's warning. Don't follow him. So I didn't. I went back inside. About 10 minutes later, I heard 3 knocks on the door. Knock, knock, knock. I looked through the window. Nobody. I opened it. Empty hallway. Then I heard a boy laughing somewhere around the corner. I closed the door. Nope. My curiosity had officially expired. When I told Raymond, he didn't seem surprised. He knocked 3 times. Raymond muttered something under his breath. What? Nothing. Who is this kid? Raymond looked at me. Then he said, Tommy. Tommy who? He hesitated. Avilmann. I'd never heard the name. Raymond started to walk away. Then he stopped. But that's not what they called him. What did they call him? Raymond sighed. Tommy Avilmann. I stared at him. Then I laughed so hard I had to lean against my cleaning cart. Tommy Avilmann? Raymond wasn't amused. His real name was Tommy Avilmann. Kids started twisting Avilmann into Evilman. That's terrible. Kids are terrible. Why'd they call him that? Raymond looked down the hallway. Because Tommy was a strange kid. That's when he finally told me the story. Tommy Avilmann had attended an after-school youth program at Westbrook in the late 1970s. He was 13. And according to Raymond, calling Tommy troubled was putting it nicely. He fought. He stole things. He threatened other kids. He'd disappear during activities and turn up in parts of the building he wasn't supposed to be in. But that wasn't why everyone remembered him. Tommy had become obsessed with astrology and the occult, not newspaper horoscopes, not asking whether a Libra should date a Sagittarius. Tommy was trying to use planetary positions, symbols, rituals, and whatever else he'd been reading about to contact something on the other side. And according to the kids who knew him, Tommy wasn't interested in contacting anything good. He talked constantly about something he called the other room. He believed there was another place right beside ours. Not heaven, not exactly hell, just somewhere else. And Tommy believed certain doors could be opened into it. The problem was, he said a person couldn't safely open one alone. He needed what he called a vessel, another human body. That's where things got disturbing. Tommy started forcing younger kids to participate. He'd convince them it was a game. He'd draw circles on the floor with chalk, make them sit in the middle. Sometimes, he'd make them hold strange objects while he read things from a notebook. A couple of kids claimed they couldn't remember what happened during these little ceremonies. One girl said she woke up crying in a bathroom on the opposite side of the building. Another boy told his mother that Tommy had cracked an egg on his head. It began to boil, that Tommy ate it while laughing. Eventually, the parents found out. The community center had enough. Tommy was going to be expelled from the youth program. His mother was called. She was supposed to pick him up that afternoon. But Tommy apparently knew. And before anyone could remove him, he tried one last time. According to the story, 4 children and 1 staff member saw it happen. Tommy went to a storage hallway in the oldest part of the building. He drew symbols around one of the doors. Then he made another boy stand in front of it, his vessel. But the other kids had finally had enough. They grabbed the younger boy and pulled him away. Tommy became furious. He screamed that they'd ruined everything. Then he opened the door himself. The staff member who witnessed it later insisted that the room on the other side wasn't there. There should have been a storage closet. Instead, there was darkness. Not a dark room, just darkness. Tommy stood there staring into it, then supposedly smiled and walked through. The door slammed shut. The staff member ran over and opened it. Storage closet, mops, buckets, shelves, no Tommy. They searched the building. Police were called. Dogs were brought in. Nothing. Tommy Avilmann had disappeared. "Come on," I said. Raymond shrugged. "I'm telling you the story." "Did you actually know him?" I asked. "No. I was a kid myself," said Raymond. "So this is one of those urban legends." "Maybe." "What happened to Tommy?" Raymond looked at me. "You've seen him twice." That shut me up. Then he gave me the warning again. "If you see Tommy, leave him alone." "Why?" "Because people who've worked here long enough know something." "What?" Raymond looked me straight in the eyes. "You can watch Tommy, you just don't chase Tommy." I wish I'd listened. A week later, I was finishing one of my evening shifts. It was almost 9. The building was empty except for Raymond and me. I was pushing my cleaning cart down the old hallway when I saw Tommy. He was maybe 40 feet ahead. Barefoot, striped shirt, jeans, exactly as before. "Tommy." He stopped. I'd never called his name before. Slowly, he turned his head. Then he smiled and ran. I don't know why I followed. That's the part I still get angry at myself about. Maybe because he'd been scaring me for weeks. Maybe because Raymond's story had made me curious. Or maybe because something wanted me to follow. Tommy rounded the corner. I went after him. He was fast. I caught sight of him at the next hallway. "Tommy!" He ran again. I followed. Each time I turned a corner, he was farther down another hallway. It felt like he was leading me somewhere. Then he reached an old metal door, the same storage area where I'd first seen him. He stopped. I was maybe 20 feet away. That's when I noticed his shirt. Something was pushing through the fabric near his shoulders. At first, I thought he had some kind of costume underneath. Then one of them moved. A curved point protruded through his shirt. Then another. Horns. Not on his head. On his shoulders. I stopped walking. "What the fudge truck is this?" Tommy turned around. That's when I saw his hands. Except they weren't hands. His arms ended at the wrists in dark, hard shapes. Split down the middle. Like hooves. I remember thinking how wrong that looked. Horns belong on a head. Hooves belong on feet. Whatever Tommy had become, somebody had assembled him incorrectly. Then I looked down. His feet were completely normal. Bare human feet. 5 toes on each. I actually whispered, "Nope." Tommy smiled. Then he opened the metal door. Darkness. The same thing Raymond had described. There should have been a storage room behind it. Instead, I was looking into something so black I couldn't tell where the floor ended. Tommy stepped backward into it. I should have run. Instead, I moved closer. I wanted to see. 10 feet, 8, 6. That's when Tommy changed. His shoulders jerked upward. His neck stretched. His legs lengthened. For a second, I thought it was some trick of the darkness. Then his head nearly touched the ceiling. He kept growing. 7 feet, 8, 9. By the time he stopped, Tommy was close to 10 feet tall. His clothes stretched with him. Those horns grew from his shoulders like 2 crooked branches. His hoof hands hung at the ends of impossibly long arms, but his bare feet stayed human. Then he stepped out of the doorway. I have never run so fast in my life. Behind me, I heard those bare feet slapping against the tile. Slap, slap, slap. Not hoofbeats, bare feet. Somehow that was worse. I rounded the corner. The lights behind me started shutting off. One after another. Click, click, click. I screamed for Raymond. Then I heard Tommy's voice. Still the voice of a 13-year-old boy. "Wait!" I ran faster. "Wait!" I could hear him gaining on me. I reached the gym. Raymond was coming through the opposite doors. "What did you do?" "Tommy!" Raymond's face changed. "Did you follow him?" "Yes!" "Good gravy, my sweet little baby. I ain't waiting for this to get wavy out at sea with the mighty Navy," yelled Raymond. Raymond grabbed my arm. "Run!" We went through the gym. Something slammed into the doors behind us. The entire metal frame shook. Raymond didn't look back. Neither did I. We reached the lobby. Raymond unlocked the front doors. We practically fell outside on top of each other. Then he locked them behind us. For maybe 30 seconds, nothing happened. I was bent over trying to breathe. Then, tap. I looked up. Tommy was standing behind the glass, normal size again, 13 years old, barefoot, no horns, normal hands. He smiled at me, then raised one finger and waved as if he was beckoning us to him. Then, he disappeared into the dark building. I never went back. Raymond signed off on the remainder of that night's hours and helped get me transferred to another community service location. Before I left, I asked him one question. "What happened to Tommy?" Raymond shook his head. "Nobody knows no more than me and you." "Those horns!" "I know." "His hands." "I know." "Was he like that before?" "No." "So what did that?" Raymond looked toward the community center. "Some people think Tommy opened a door and whatever was on the other side changed him." "Changed him how?" Raymond shrugged. "Maybe it put him back together wrong." That made my nope-o-meter blow a fuse. But Raymond wasn't finished. "There's another theory." "What?" "Maybe Tommy wasn't damaged." He looked at me. "Maybe that's what he was trying to become. Them shoulder horns and them hand hooves. Maybe that's what he portal jumped to become." I completed the rest of my community service at a food pantry. Nothing supernatural happened there, unless you count a woman trying to convince me that canned cranberry sauce doesn't expire. I don't. It's been several years now. Westbrook Community Center is still there. As far as I know, Tommy Avilmann is still officially a missing child from the 1970s. Maybe the whole story about the portal was invented after he disappeared. Maybe Raymond had heard the legend so many times that he believed it himself. But I know what I saw. And there's one thing about Tommy that still bothers me more than the horns, more than the hoof hands, even more than watching a 13-year-old boy stretch into something nearly 10 feet tall. When Tommy ran after me, he could have caught me, easily. Those legs were enormous. He was gaining on me until Raymond appeared. Then he stopped. For years, I thought Raymond had somehow saved me. Now I'm not so sure, because I've replayed that night hundreds of times, and I keep remembering the expression on Tommy's face when I first started chasing him. He wasn't angry. He wasn't frightened. He was smiling, like this was exactly what he'd wanted me to do. Raymond told me Tommy used to force other children to become his vessels. But Tommy disappeared before anyone figured out whether his final ritual actually worked. Sometimes I wonder if Tommy doesn't haunt that community center at all. Maybe he's still doing exactly what he was doing in 1977, opening the door, coming back, and waiting for someone curious enough to follow him through. I don't know what happens if he catches you. And after seeing what came back the first time, I don't ever want to find out. Story 3. I felt like I'd won the community service lottery. While everyone else spent 8 hours hauling brush, scraping paint, and cleaning trash out of city lots, I got assigned to the foreman's detail. Most days, I rode around in an air-conditioned pickup truck, picked up supplies, delivered tools, and helped the foreman with whatever he needed. Everybody else hated me for it. I didn't care. I thought I'd found the easiest way imaginable to finish my hours. What I didn't understand was that the foreman wasn't making my community service easier. He was training me to replace him. This happened in Macon, Georgia, in 2017. I was 26 and had been sentenced to 100 hours of community service after getting myself into some trouble. Nothing exciting. Nothing I'm proud of. The judge gave me community service, and I was determined to get through it without complaining. My assignment was with a county work program. We did a little bit of everything. Cleaned vacant lots, removed brush, painted over graffiti, moved equipment, picked up illegal dumping. If the county owned it and nobody else wanted to clean it, apparently we did. The man running our crew was Foreman Harlan. Everybody just called him Harlan. He was probably 50. Big guy, broad shoulders, gray beard, work boots that looked like they had survived 3 wars. Harlan wasn't friendly, but he wasn't mean either. He just didn't talk much. My first day, he watched me working for maybe an hour. Then he called me over. "You know how to drive?" "Yes, sir." "Got a license?" "Yes, sir." He tossed me a set of truck keys. "Congratulations, you're promoted." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. From then on, I was basically Harlan's helper. If we needed water, I got it. If somebody forgot a shovel, I went back for one. If Harlan needed something from the maintenance yard, I rode with him. It was unbelievably easy. The other guys noticed. Whenever Harlan called my name, somebody would say, "Look at the boss's little assistant," or "Must be nice." I'd smile and climb into the truck. Harlan didn't care. After about 2 weeks, I started noticing something strange about him. He always seemed to know things before they happened. Little things at first. One morning, before we'd even left the maintenance yard, Harlan pointed at one of the guys. "Don't put Marcus on the mower today." "Why?" "Just don't." 2 hours later, the mower threw a blade. Nobody was hurt because Marcus wasn't sitting on it. Another afternoon, Harlan suddenly told everyone to move away from a dead oak tree. There wasn't any wind. Beautiful day. Less than a minute later, a huge limb crashed exactly where 2 guys had been standing. We all stared at Harlan. He shrugged. Tree looked bad. Maybe. Then there were the animals. Dogs hated him. We'd pull up to somebody's property and their dog would start barking. Then Harlan would step out. The barking would stop. The dog would whimper and back away. One crawled underneath a porch and refused to come back out until Harlan left. Birds were stranger. Sometimes we'd be working, and I'd notice dozens of them lined along telephone wires, all facing the same direction, all watching Harlan. I mentioned it once. He looked up. "Nosy things." Then he waved his hand. Every bird left the wire at exactly the same time. I remember standing there thinking, that was odd. But Harlan was making my community service easy. So my philosophy became, not my circus, not my creepy foreman. About halfway through my hours, Harlan and I were driving back from picking up supplies. He turned onto a narrow county road. I knew immediately we weren't heading toward the crew. "Where are we going?" "Need to check something." We drove maybe 15 minutes. The houses disappeared. Then the pavement ended. Harlan turned onto a dirt road surrounded by pine trees. Eventually, we reached an old property. There was a small abandoned house sitting back from the road. Windows boarded, roof sagging, weeds almost waist high. Harlan parked. "Stay here." "Fine by me." He walked toward the house. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Of course. Maybe 10 minutes passed, then 15. Finally, Harlan came back. He wasn't carrying anything, but his hands were covered in black dirt. "What happened?" "Nothing." He started the truck. Then he looked at me. "If anybody asks, we never came here." I smiled. "Okay." He didn't. "I'm serious." That was the first time Harlan made me uncomfortable. A few days later, we went back. Same house. This time Harlan made me come with him. We walked around back. Behind the house was a clearing, and in the middle of it was a hole. Not a ditch, not an animal den. It was almost perfectly round, about 4 feet across. The soil around it was completely black, not dark brown. Black. Harlan stood at the edge. I stayed several feet away. "What is that?" "Problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind you don't poke." Good enough for me. Then something shifted underneath us. Loose dirt slid down the sides. I stepped backward. "Harlan!" "I know." Something deep inside the hole made a slow sound, almost like breathing. I headed toward the truck. Harlan grabbed my arm. "Don't run!" "Why?" "Because it'll know." "It'll know what?" Harlan kept watching the hole. "That you're afraid." Well, that information would have been useful before he brought me out there. We backed away slowly. Nothing came out. Once we reached the truck, Harlan opened the passenger door. "Get in." I did. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, I asked, "What's in that hole?" Harlan kept driving. "Something that was here before that house." "An animal?" "No." "A person?" "No." "What then?" He looked at me. "You've got 42 hours left." "What does that have to do with anything? Means you'll be gone soon." That answer didn't help. For the next couple of weeks, everything went back to normal. No abandoned house. No breathing hole. Just community service. I almost convinced myself it had been some strange sinkhole or animal den. Then came the Saturday, everything fell apart. There were 12 of us working that day. We were clearing an overgrown drainage area behind an old industrial property. Around 3 in the afternoon, one of the guys, Darnell, started arguing with Harlan. Darnell had been on the crew longer than I had, and he absolutely hated Harlan. I never knew why. That afternoon, I found out. "You think nobody knows what you're doing?" Darnell shouted. Harlan ignored him. Darnell followed. "I'm talking to you." Harlan stopped. Everybody else stopped too. "What do you want, Darnell?" "You need to stay away from that house." My stomach dropped. Harlan looked at me, just for a second, then back at Darnell. "What house?" Darnell laughed. "That's what you always do." Harlan told everyone to get back to work. Darnell wouldn't. "You've been taking people out there for years." "People, not just me." Darnell pointed at him. "Every time somebody disappears, you find another helper." Nobody moved. Harlan's expression changed. I had never seen him look afraid before. "Darnell, tell them. Go home. Tell them what you feed out there." That word stayed with me. Feed. Harlan took one step toward him. Then every bird in the trees started screaming. Hundreds of them. The sound was unbelievable. Harlan immediately turned toward the drainage ditch. "No!" The dirt behind Darnell moved. Not shook. Moved. Something black shot out of the ditch and wrapped around his ankle. Darnell screamed. He went down hard. 3 of us grabbed him. I had one arm. Another guy grabbed his safety vest. Harlan grabbed his other hand. Whatever had Darnell started pulling. Hard. "Help me!" We pulled. The thing pulled harder. Then Harlan started shouting words I didn't recognize. Not English. Not anything I had ever heard. The black thing released Darnell. For maybe 1 second. Then it struck again. Darnell disappeared into the drainage ditch. Gone. We ran over. Nothing. No tunnel, no opening. Just muddy water barely deep enough to cover your shoes. One guy started yelling. Another called 911. Harlan stood completely still. He looked defeated. Police came. Fire department. Search crews. They tore that drainage area apart. They found one of Darnell's boots. Nothing else. I told police exactly what I'd seen. They assumed I was confused. Maybe Darnell had fallen into a culvert. Maybe there was an underground drainage pipe. Except, according to county plans, there was nothing underneath that area large enough for a person. Darnell was never found. 3 nights later, Harlan showed up at my apartment. I almost didn't open the door. "What are you doing here? You need to come with me." "No." "Then it'll come here." That got me into the truck. We drove straight to the abandoned house. The hole was larger now, maybe 6 feet across. I could hear that breathing before we even reached the clearing. "What is this place?" Harlan finally told me. His family had watched the property for generations. His grandfather, his father, now him. He called the hole a mouth. Not a portal, not a grave, a mouth. And the thing connected to it had a name, Bo Gosh. I almost laughed when he said it. The name sounded ridiculous. Harlan didn't smile. "You don't have to believe the name," he said. "Just believe what you saw happen to Darnell." According to Harlan, Bo Gosh would go quiet for years, sometimes decades. Then it would wake up hungry. His family had learned ways to keep it satisfied. Certain objects, certain plants, blood, sometimes animals. I looked at him. "And people?" "No." Darnell said people disappeared. They do. "Then what are you doing?" "Trying to make sure it doesn't choose for itself." I didn't know what that meant. Then Harlan told me why he'd put me on his detail. It wasn't because he liked me. It wasn't because I was a good worker. He said he saw something around me on my first morning. A mark. He couldn't explain what it looked like, only that people in his family had been taught to recognize it. What does the mark mean? Harlan looked toward the hole. That you can get close. To that? Yes. Why would I want to? You wouldn't. That was the first sensible thing he'd said all night. Harlan began placing things around the edge. Stones, bundles of dried plants, pieces of metal. Then he handed me a jar. Pour this around the rim. What is it? Doesn't matter. It smelled like burnt wood and spoiled fruit. I poured it. The breathing stopped. Harlan relaxed. Then a voice came from inside the hole. Harlan! We both froze. It sounded like Darnell. Harlan! Help me! I stepped forward. Harlan grabbed my shoulder. That isn't him. The voice came again, this time crying. Please! A hand appeared near the opening. Darnell's work glove. Then his face slowly rose from the darkness. I moved toward him. Harlan shoved me backward. That is not Darnell. The thing wearing Darnell's face smiled. The mouth stretched too far. Then it sank into the darkness. The ground started shaking. Harlan began shouting those strange words again. The black dirt around the opening started collapsing inward. Then something grabbed him. He fell. I caught his wrist. Whatever had him began pulling. Harlan! For a second, we were in almost the exact same position we had been in with Darnell. Except Harlan wasn't panicking. He looked at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. You were the easy one. What? My detail. The thing pulled harder. I held on. I needed you to learn the job. What job? Harlan looked toward the hole, then back at me. The foreman always needs another foreman. Before I could ask what he meant, Harlan let go. He disappeared into the darkness. The hole collapsed, completely. 1 second it was there. The next there was only grass and black dirt. Then even the black dirt faded into ordinary soil. I stood there alone. The birds started landing. 1, then 5, then 20. Soon the trees around me were filled with them, everyone facing me. I ran. I left Harlan's truck there. I walked nearly 3 miles before I got cell service. Police searched the property. They found the truck. They found the abandoned house. They found no hole. And no Harlan. Within 4 days, 2 men from our community service program had vanished. The county suspended the entire crew. I was questioned several times. I told investigators everything I thought they might believe. I left out the rest. Nobody needed to hear about Bobo Gosh. Eventually, my remaining community service hours were transferred somewhere else. I completed them. My paperwork was signed, and I thought I was finally finished. 3 weeks later, someone knocked on my apartment door. When I opened it, nobody was there. A cardboard box sat on my welcome mat. No shipping label, no address. Inside was an old 3-ring binder. The cover was cracked. The edges looked burned. Across the front, someone had written, "The Bobo Gosh Playbook." I carried it inside. The first pages contained county maps, properties, drainage systems, old buildings, roads I recognized from Harlan's routes. There were handwritten instructions, symbols, dates, lists of things to bury, things to burn, things to leave beside certain properties. Then I reached the photographs. There were dozens of pictures of Harlan, young Harlan, old Harlan, Harlan driving the county truck, Harlan standing beside different community service crews. Under every photograph was the same word, foreman. Then came pictures of another man. He looked enough like Harlan that I assumed it was his father. Same job, same county, same word underneath, foreman. Farther back were photographs from decades earlier. Different men, different clothes, different trucks, same job, foreman. Then I found myself, a photograph from my first day of community service. Orange vest, trash grabber in my hand. Underneath, foreman. I turned the page. Me driving Harlan's truck. Foreman. Another. Me carrying supplies. Foreman. Then I reached pictures that shouldn't have existed. One showed me standing outside the abandoned house wearing Harlan's work shirt. I had never worn it. Another showed me beside the hole, older, gray beginning to show in my beard. Another showed me surrounded by a community service crew I had never met. I kept flipping. 10 years older, 20, more crews, different trucks, different people, always the same word, foreman. The final photograph showed me as an old man standing beside that black hole. On the back was a sentence. When the foreman stops feeding Bobo Gosh chooses another. I closed the playbook. I threw it into the dumpster behind my apartment. The next morning, it was sitting on my kitchen table. I burned it. 3 days later, it was underneath my bed. I drove more than an hour and threw it into a river. When I came home, it was sitting on my couch. That was when I stopped trying to get rid of it. For months, I refused to open it. Then the dream started. Every night, I stood beside the hole. Something underneath breathed. Sometimes I heard Darnell, sometimes Harlan. Eventually, I heard myself. Then animals started disappearing near my apartment. Birds gathered outside my windows. Black dirt appeared underneath my bed. One morning, I woke up and found Harlan's old truck keys sitting on my chest. I gave in. I called the county. I told them I had worked under Harlan and heard they had never permanently replaced him. They hadn't. I knew the routes. I knew the equipment. I already understood the community service program. I applied. A few weeks later, I became the foreman. That was years ago. I'm still doing it. And now I finally understand what Harlan was doing. The playbook changes. Pages appear that weren't there before. Sometimes Bobo Gosh wants something small. A bundle buried under a tree. A jar poured into a drainage ditch. An animal left somewhere overnight. Sometimes the instructions are stranger, but every now and then, a completely blank page appears. The next morning, there's a photograph on it. A person. The first time that happened, I refused. I told myself I wasn't Harlan. I wasn't going to become whatever he had been. 3 people disappeared around the county that month. People whose pictures had never appeared in the book. That was when I understood the rule. If the foreman doesn't feed Bobo Gosh, Bo Gosh feeds itself. So I started following the playbook. I'm not proud of that. But I also know what happens when I don't. The county thinks I'm an excellent foreman. My crews like me. I give them plenty of water. I don't work them harder than necessary. I remember what it felt like to be the guy in the orange vest who just wanted his hours signed. Most people doing community service aren't monsters. They made mistakes. They deserve to finish their hours and go home. But occasionally, Bobo Gosh chooses. And when it does, a photograph appears. Then I take somebody with me on a special detail, just like Harlan used to take me. Last Saturday, the playbook gave me a new picture. A young man, 25 or 26. He had just started community service that morning. I stared at the photograph for a long time, because underneath it, Bobo Gosh hadn't written the usual symbol. It hadn't marked him as an offering. There was only one word, foreman. That was when I understood. Bobo Gosh isn't asking me to feed him this one. He's telling me my time is getting short. Monday morning, I watched the young man work for about an hour. Good worker, didn't complain. Then I called him over. You know how to drive? Yes, sir. Got a license? He nodded. I tossed him the keys to my truck. He caught them. Congratulations! He smiled. Seriously? Seriously. I pointed toward the passenger side. You're on my detail now. As he climbed inside, I felt the Bobo Gosh playbook sitting behind my seat. And somewhere far beneath the county roads, something began to breathe. I used to think Harlan had ruined my life when he chose me. Now I know better. Harlan was only following the playbook, just like I am. And one day, the young man sitting beside me will probably understand that too. Because eventually, every foreman learns the same thing. You can fight Bobo Gosh. You can run from Bobo Gosh. You can burn the playbook, bury it, throw it into a river, and move 100 miles away. It doesn't matter. Sooner or later, somebody has to feed Bobo Gosh. And that brings us to the end of tonight's stories. Community service is supposed to be about paying something back. A A few hours, a few weekends, a mistake you made that eventually gets put behind you. But sometimes the person sitting beside you knows something about your family you wish you'd never heard. Sometimes the building you've been assigned to clean has a door that should never have been opened. And sometimes the easiest assignment on the entire crew turns out to be the one you'll be working for the rest of your life. Until next time, I will tell the stories if you will stay scared.